Well. Welcome to another episode of Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines. I'm your host, hashtag one time. And today, y'all, I have a special guest on the show. We're doing it live, and we'll just be talking about life and life lessons. Man, without further ado, let me introduce my guest to you today. He's a husband, he's a big brother. He's a trusted cousin, an author of several books, which we'll get into today and talk about. One, his very first one, Son of God at 11:11, and his latest, I Am Your Brother. He's my eldest child. He's my son. He's Jaimy Reynolds, and today we're having a conversation about our journeys in life and life lessons. And my heart is just really warm because we've been planning to do this show for quite some time. And now we get an opportunity to do that. What's going on, man? What's going on, Jay?
Pops, I'm blessed to be on here. We have spoke about this for a while, and at Godspeed, here we are.
Wow. And there are so many stories. He tells these stories all the time, and we'll get into a few of those. Most of them, we're going to poke a little bit of fun at each other. But on the flip side of that, I think what we'll do is, and my goal for our conversation on today is to enlighten and encourage other dads to have activities with their sons, and particularly their eldest sons or their eldest child. It creates an atmosphere of not only collaboration, but it creates an atmosphere of unity, because there's nothing like the unity between a father and his son. So let's get into it, Jay. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I got a couple questions for you. I'll throw out a couple softball ones
All
to
right.
start out with. And the first one is this: looking back, what are some of your fondest memories growing up? Tell us a funny story.
Funny story with my dad. Where should I begin? I could sit up here for an hour and just tell funny stories, but some of the fondest memories growing up were as I got older, I realized what you were doing, and I was planting a seed. And you were a natural comedian, so
A
just
natural
being
comedian.
a,
What?
a, a natural comedian, but it was even when you weren't trying to be funny, it was just funny. Like for an example, it's just you know uh, the car rides, the car rides.
The car rides.
We were a
Talk
music
about the
lover,
car rides.
so you would always play your music, and you were a
Right,
music
right,
lover.
right.
And but school was always in session, and I knew the session was going to begin when you turn the volume down. But so the funny thing about it was, when you're in a car driving, you just to turn the volume from 10 to 1 probably takes about a second or two.
Right.
But with you probably took about 25 seconds to turn the volume from 10 to 1. So you just be driving and you just
Oh my.
and then so school, and it was
Yeah.
in session, and that's when you
Yeah.
would plant those seeds. Or you know, if I had let's say I had a new pair of Jordans, and I came over, and you might kind of look at the shoes and be like, "What are those?"
Yeah.
Like, these are the new Michael Jordans.
Right.
Wow. So
MJ at the time,
but
huh?
you
So,
you you'd say, "Are you wearing those because everybody else is wearing them?"
right.
You would make me think. That was something that you always did. You would make me just think. Or if I was after that with the shoes, maybe once a month I could just be walking or just randomly, and you would just kind of raise your voice to grab my attention and be like, "Hey, you either gonna be a leader or a follower.
Yeah.
Pick one."
Always the knowledge, always trying to interject. And there's reflection there for me. And what I mean by reflection, my dad would typically act, your granddad would typically act in the same way. There was always a lesson. There was always a lesson to be learned, and so I learned a lot of things from my dad. But one, he'd always say that he was the man, and nobody in the house would deny that. So let's then switch, because I might tell this story at the very end, but I might not. We'll see how our time goes. So let's switch it up just a little bit.
All right.
And so I want to ask. There were times that on weekends when you guys would come over, but I knew you had a life outside of coming over, and where we would interact and how we would interact. But what was a pastime that you loved to engage in when you were growing up? What did you like to do? What was a pastime that you really liked?
Growing up, pastime just playing basketball. And I'll never forget the very first basketball game I ever witnessed. You know, I left it was NBC when Jordan and the Bulls were playing.
Right,
And I
right,
heard this noise, and you were in the living room, and I walked in, and it was Chicago Bulls versus the LA Lakers, Jordan
right,
and Magic.
right. I
And
remember that.
I sat down and watched that whole series
Hmm.
and with you. And that memory stuck with me. And as I got older, I realized when you spoke, it was always meaningful and it was something very knowledgeable about something that you love. So that kind of stuck with me. Basketball, football, just playing with friends. I grew up around, you know, you and my mother in your own sense were artists. And so I would just watch you guys and just picked up little things that you
I
did
I I,
and
I know one story that I wasn't going to tell it, but I am. But before I do tell that story about a great pastime that I used to enjoy. I love the NFL. And so when you guys were little, we would get on our knees and roll up a sock and act like we're
yeah.
playing football before the game actually came on. And
Mhm.
I'd tackle you and Jay, and that really was a great pastime. But one I noticed as you begin to get a little older, a pastime that you really liked was you like you like to box. You know the sport. I've watched you predict the sport. And I didn't, I was never really into it all that much. I mean, I know about your Muhammad Ali's, your Joe Frazier's, and all them. And rest in peace to a great man who just recently
Mhm.
passed away, the boxer George Foreman. But you like that sport. Tell me what drew you to liking that sport.
I would say when the adults would get together, have food, music, and it was a fight night, and just the energy of the fighters coming to the
Right,
ring,
right,
the excitement, and then getting into their training and the whole setup before the match. But I just saw it as boxing is a little deeper. It
right,
was very connected to life.
right,
From in a prize fight, you have 12 rounds, 1 through 12, and then in a year, you have 12 months. And I would see how some of the boxers would kind of not throw
yeah,
themselves out at the beginning of the fight, but they would pace themselves. It's really a sweet science, and everything in life is in that square
right.
circle from resilience
It is
when you get knocked down, getting back up, your
absolutely.
training, your preparation, and I was just a fan of the art of hit and not get hit. As a child, I was a big fan of Bruce Lee, and so
Oh, so you like the kung fu too. So and it's kind of strange. A lot of the pastime you kind of took after me because I like to play basketball.
mhm.
And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tell this. The last time we played one on one and I beat you, and the day I did, I was starting to get a little older then and a little out of shape. I beat you and you declared I cheated. And here's one thing I've always said. Well, he'll never get to say he beat me because we only played one time. Talk a little bit about that whooping I gave you that day.
Well, I got a different perspective on it.
Well, of
It was
course you do. Of
it
course
was
you have one.
it would if we were going to 11, I would get to about right when I get to 8 and you were like at 3 or 4. That's when you would start hacking and fouling and
Not me.
doing everything.
Not I, says the
I
dad.
to where I couldn't even. You would just. It was
Not
like
I.
said a hack a shack, a hack a Jamie, and so. But you just didn't like to lose, and by any means necessary, you would win. So I was
And
like,
that
well,
was always, that, Jay, was always the lesson. Never give up. Never give in.
and,
You are a winner and
and
you
you know
will
something
always
that
win.
one thing that you said when you end up winning, and no matter how you won, the fouling and all that at the end, but you said something, and I was like, man, come on now, you know you cheating, but you said you got to have that killer instinct,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
so almost everything you said was like a gem or a planted seed. It's like no matter what, life is gonna be hard. Life can cheat you, or whatever. You still got to
You
come out
still
on top. So it was a
have
message
to,
within that.
and that was always, the lesson. I want to shift gears just a little bit, and we're going to get into your artistry in writing and what kind of drew you in to become an artist. But I've got one more just before we kind of move into that. If you had the opportunity to have lunch, tea, or whatever with anybody, past or present, who would you have lunch with?
You know, I would have lunch with my sister. Rest in peace. I
Yes,
know that there's a lot of famous, well-known people,
right,
and I can get a lot of game from them.
right,
But you know, to be honest, if I had to meet celebrities or famous people, I would everybody in my circle,
right.
family. I would rather spend time with them first before anybody. So it would be my sister.
Awesome, awesome. I would have to agree with you. We won't get into it today, but we know that tragedy that happened. But it has taught us a lot. Jess's passing, rest in peace, has taught us a lot, and I'm so glad again to be sitting here with you today. So I want to know though, when you're in your space, when you're in your zone, and you're writing or you're creating anything, what's your go-to hype song that gets you up and gets you ready? You know, I'm a lover of music. You know, your
Mhm.
granddad, your grandmom, they were musicians. My dad, he played the guitar. And I've always grew up around music. Music is nostalgic for me. What is your hype go-to song?
There's two. If I'm um working out or before, there are two artists that I've been inspired by is Andre 3000 and Kid Cudi. It's a song called By Design.
Okay,
And of this whole thing, from the whole movie of my life, I think it
right,
was By Design. So that title, that song fits in. That's a more upbeat song, but if I'm writing, creating,
right.
um, I'm listening to more music without words. And so there's a song called Shabaka. It's an artist Shabaka featuring
Uh-huh.
Andre 3000, and they're on the flute instrumentation, and it's just so peaceful and
Yeah.
mellow, and it just gives a pool of space of
And that's
gratitude.
your go-to. I've got many. I don't even know if I could list even one song that I would say, this is the one
Yeah,
that I would
so many.
actually go to. So before we get into what you've already done in terms of your art, what the future holds for you there, describe Jaimy, if you would, in 3 words. Who's Jaimy?
Three, three words. I would have to say that my upbringing has humbled me to the core. I would say humble.
Right,
I would say resilient. from just being whatever the enemy, whatever life has thrown at me, has never been able to conform me or change me. I stay really true to myself. So I would
Right.
say humble,
Absolutely.
resilient, and I would say a visionary.
A visionary. You know, you have to have a goal. You've got to have a vision. But, I've always taught you've got to move into action. And that's what you did a couple, 2 or 3 years ago when you decided to write the book. What inspired you to write your first book, Son of God at 11:11? Talk about that inspiration.
The first book I wrote mainly in my 20s, and the book is pretty much journal scraps into one that
Right,
touches up on heart, mind, soul, testimonies, poetry. Anything at the core of it is food for thought and good food for the heart, mind, and soul. It's
right.
just anything that can inspire, help the next person. I saw. I've always watched my mom and dad, and you wrote poetry, did spoken
Yeah,
word.
yep.
My mom, I would see her write a lot, and so though that stuck with me. And there were so many events that happened uh, throughout the journey of my life to where I believe I got to see people. They
Right,
opened up to me, and I
right,
got to realize what the common denominator of silent pain and hurt was, and what led people to depression and prison. And it was the common denominator
right.
was a lack of love during crucial times of their life. And so I
What would
tried
you
to.
say? What would you say to young people today? What have you already said? What would you say to them to encourage them right now in today's time, in the times that we live in now? Because as you well know, time has changed from.
Mhm, yeah.
I'm not going to give your age because then that would give my age. But
uh,
time has changed. What would you do, or what would you say to young men right now? And what have you said?
I would say take a look at your fingerprint. Every one of us have a fingerprint, and you are the only individual on this entire planet that has that design. That
Right.
means that you're here for a reason.
Absolutely.
That is your power. Now, I believe there's like a purpose that man has for us, and that our Creator has for us. If you seek that purpose, that design, why you have that design,
Right.
know that that design is love first. That you are loved, and
What's in your DNA? In other words,
yes,
you're
sir.
saying, yeah,
Yes, sir.
that,
Absolutely. And
that
yeah,
is important. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but yeah, that's important. That's
abs-
deep.
abs- absolutely. Keep your circle tight. Seek knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. You ask, you shall receive. Seek knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and do whatever you need to do to gain self control. I find that that is one of the most key components to stay
Absolutely.
away from stress, strife, prison, being a product of your environment.
Well,
Um,
that's one thing I can say, and I tell people all the time this about my two boys, U and J. Hardworking men always have work ethic, treat people right, just overall good people. But I believe we are put on this earth for a specific purpose.
mm,
And what you speak about and what you're talking about is purpose. What do you believe and what do you see as your purpose as to why you're here?
I would always kind of, growing up, be modest of what I would say here because never want to put myself any higher or lower. But, it is what it is. And I got older, I'm just put 10 toes down on it. I feel like when I look at the course of my life and I
Right,
line it up with the word of God, the mind and heart of Jesus Christ, I feel like that I've been molded
right.
to be an example of having the courage to forgive,
That's
be
right.
an example to still love despite maybe rejection or silent jealousy, or be
You
an
said that
example
one. Yeah,
to
absolutely.
still to be Christ-like to the best of my abilities, to be an example out here that no matter what we're experiencing and going through, when they're around me, they feel better, they're understood,
Wow.
and I would like to expose people's goodness, greatness, because I believe every
Right.
single person out here is great at something.
And and
But
and,
just an
and
example.
so many people have an anointing on their life. And you know, I consider myself having an anointing on my life because what I like to do, and you know what I've always
Mhm.
done in my life, is try to impact the lives of young people and try to inspire them. You know what my podcast is all about? It's winning at life behind enemy lines. And I see you're sporting our merchandise in who whoever views the podcast, make sure you go in the description of this episode right here. There you can order our winning at life behind enemy lines t-shirts. But I want to move to this right here because the future is what we are talking about. And I've heard you mention over the past couple 2 or 3 months that you're working on something new. Tell us about the latest project that you're working on.
This would be my fourth book. It's geared towards young men. It's for everybody, but young men, young males of this world, from 13 on to 21. It's I don't have a for sure title yet, but as of right now, it's going to
Right,
be called "Let's Talk, Young Man."
right. Oh,
I'm not
wow.
here. I'm not here to preach. I'm not here
Right,
to teach. I'm just coming as like a big brother. I
right.
feel like I'm a good example um, that can help the youth to not be a product of your environment. I feel like I could have turned out many different ways,
Sure,
but I have the
sure.
a blueprint, a game plan to not become a product of your environment, to dealing with the heart, mind, and soul, dealing with the women, how to handle, respect the women.
Relationships, man. Yeah.
Even
Speak on it.
even just simple like getting pulled over by the police, how to conduct yourself,
Right.
just different avenues. And I want to make it a smaller book, just something they can carry with them, and they can go to the table of contents, and whatever you're experiencing, from your fingerprint to the movie of your life. We all have a movie to our life, and
Yes, we
what
do.
chapters and scenes help mold you that is related to your purpose. And it's just geared towards young men.
Awesome.
It's
Awesomeness. Awesomeness, man. And wow, you have to have an example of the life that you want to lead and the things that you want to do. So many people have a gift, but they're not walking in their purpose, and they're not manifesting that gift for their purpose. I've watched you grow in order to do that. It sounds like another game changer, what you're working on right now. And, if I had to say, I want to be the first ones to get one of those copies because, I'm a lifelong learner.
absolutely.
And as you well know, one of the things that when we're behind enemy lines, one of the things that life teaches us is you may lose the battle sometimes behind enemy lines, but you'll win the war if you don't stop. You've got to keep going. And for you to have it within you, to have it aligned in your DNA for your purpose in life. I've watched you grow into that, and it's just amazing. When you look down the road, what's one thing, if you look in reverse, you say, I have accomplished that? What's one thing that, and I know there are many things, but what's
Mhm.
one thing in particular you think about that you want to accomplish?
One thing that I want to accomplish, one of them I feel like there's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Hmm.
It's to be yourself in a world that's constantly trying to change you is the greatest accomplishment.
Wow.
So
Yes.
there, being my true self,
Yes.
despite living, in this society, has been one of my probably greatest accomplishment. But down the road, I want to just add some color to this world and make a difference. And before I came to this world and before I leave, I made it a better place.
Right.
I inspired and touch hearts and have a place in people's heart to where that whatever's in our heart
That's
can
leadership.
better
That's
them.
right.
Because I feel like in our heart, the more you fill your heart with love, there's no room for jealousy and strife and fear and all that. And love is a healing agent. You'll age
It is.
better. It's like
He said, and by he, I mean Jesus said, "There's nothing greater than that." And I've watched you over the years display that, give love. And I did an episode the other day where I talked about self-healing, self-love. Those are a few of the things that we need when we are behind enemy lines. Of course, we need support, but you know as well as I know, as you've walked this journey, that not everybody is going to jump on the bandwagon and support. Not everybody is going to grab your hand and see you through. And it's so important not to tell everybody what your dreams are, but it's more so important to act upon those. So I want to end this segment by just asking you that ultimate question. When do you expect for your next project to be out? One, and number two, where can people go to find your merchandise and to purchase your books?
My goal is to have the book finished by August 15th. That's right around when school starts, because I want to get these books into the school system. You can find my books and t-shirts at www.authorjaiemyreynolds.com. Also have a YouTube channel, and that's where you can find my work. All good food for the heart, mind, and soul. I'm trying to get that positive message out there to the world.
If we Googled your YouTube, that would come up, and there are links on there
Yes,
where
sir.
people can order your material. Awesome. And man, I want to thank you. When I started Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines YouTube channel, you were very instrumental in guiding me, and I've learned so much. And I'm hoping that you share this episode with all the people that are behind you. I support you 100%, but all the people that support you and all the people that are behind you, I hope you share this episode with them. And so I'm going to post it. You post it. I think, again, as I said at the beginning of the episode, men who have to make a connection with them. And so, man, you talked about some powerful things in this episode. You talked about truth. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on the Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines show today. Don't forget, go to Jaimy Reynolds on YouTube, and there's a link there where you can order the merchandise. And we look forward to the book coming out. And don't forget, every week you can catch Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines podcast, your host, hashtag one time. Log on. As I say, pull up, get out, and join the movement. And the movement is we aspire to do great things according to our purpose in life. But what we do understand is if you are going to win the battle, you've got to stay in the fight. I've enjoyed our time today. Jay, any last words? Any last words you got for the people?
Yes. I want to personally thank you, my father, my dad, because I always have to pay homage to where I get my goods from. And Dad, whenever you see any of my work come out, whether it's short films, books, anything, that's a part of you.
Oh,
because
wow.
what I've learned comes from my parents and the world around me. So I am who I am because of my dad and my mother. And to hear you say these things, this means the world to me. And I'm enjoying the podcast, and I'm tuning in. And I thank you for having me.
I'm honored, my son. Y'all, look, we've got the blog next week, the Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines blog. Go on, read it, or I'll do an audio version. And again, we've got more episodes of Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines. I've enjoyed our show today. I hope you have too. Peace.